All right. Hey, welcome back to another episode of a couple of Idaho Common-Taters.
I still love that title. It's great.
It's great.
Because we are taters.
I love to eat taters. I love to grow taters.
Well, I just think around white tater salad.
Well, do you prefer white potatoes or red potatoes, russets?
It really depends.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm doing mashed, I love garlic mashed reds. You can't beat a good Norcota either, though. I mean, nice yellow potato.
Oh, yeah, the golden.
I mean,
almost tastes like it's buttered.
Yeah. Well, so the first time I ever saw a Norcota, the farmer I was fixing his piler had a whole bunch of Norcotas. They were as big as a football, darn near. I mean, not as big around, but long. I mean, They were just. And I thought, I'm going to take one of those home and bake it. Well, I baked it for like an hour and 45 minutes, and it was still hard in the middle. Yeah. So I baked it a little bit longer, and I got it done and cooked. And I took that first bite with just a little salt and pepper and no butter, and it was like, oh, that is just heaven.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
It's never stopped me from adding butter to it.
Well, no, I mean, come on, it's like.
Hey, so we'll talk about potatoes another day.
Okay,
let's move our attention over to
education.
Let's do that. So Paul Thompson here. I'm running for House of Representatives in District 24 for Seat A. Basically, it's the city of Twin Falls and a little bit of trimming over the edges. And so I'm hoping for people to go out and vote for me, and I want them to do the same for you over here in District 23.
Yeah, I hope we can get some good votes. And, I at least hope to scare my opponent.
There you go.
It's like, if I can make her pucker a little bit and and worry, wiping the sweat off the brow come debate time, it'll be beautiful. So anyway, I'm Tony Ulrich, and like Paul said, I'm running for the U.S. House, or not U.S. House, I'm sorry. I've got too many things on my mind. State House in District 23 for Seat B. That covers pretty much Hawaii, Elmore, and West Twin Falls County.
We're talking the furthest southwest dot of the Idaho map to just to
about the middle of the state,
to the west end of Twin Falls County.
What is the middle of the state? Twin Falls is about the center of the state, isn't it?
South
Central.
So
So I've got pretty much the southern half of the state. Everything south of 84, except for like parts of Canyon County and stuff up there. Yeah. Wow.
Big area.
Huge
giant area.
And surprisingly, it's only the second biggest district in the state. There's actually one bigger.
Really? And I can walk from one end of my district to the other it might take me a couple of hours at most.
Why would you? You got a vehicle.
You're right. I might stop and take a nap somewhere, but it would take.
Get a Dairy Queen. At least you got one of those.
I got two of them. I can make a stop here and then, that's
perfect.
A great idea, man. I'm going to do that. So let's talk education a little bit. So we're both running for these positions on the Idaho Constitution Party, or the Constitution Party of Idaho Platform.
Go CP.
Yes, there you go. So our education platform, I'll just read the starter paragraph, and then that'll launch us into a conversation. It says, we believe parents bear the primary responsibility for the education, training, moral upbringing, and discipline of their children. Without parental or guardian involvement, no child's education will be complete or full. Then, of course, it's actually a pretty long platform that speaks about some of where we adhere to and where we arrive at this position as Constitution Party of Idaho candidates that come out of what was called the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, which has nothing to do with the northwest corner of the United States. It was the Northwest Ordinance in 1787, which didn't include Idaho, but out of those ordinances arrive a lot of where we adhere to about what we think about education. It ought to be locally controlled. We've talked off air quite a bit here about the reason and the benefit for Idaho to be separated from the federal Department of Education, and I think from there, Tony, we ought to just launch out from there alone.
Well, like I was telling you when we were talking, I really think I was the last class in my school that was actually taught civics. After me, they had some local government and social studies, but our education system, after Jimmy Carter introduced the nice Board of Education, just it became an indoctrination center. Yeah, I said that wrong too. I'm having a tongue twister today. It's more of indoctrinating people. It wants people in compliance with government instead of questioning it.
Yeah.
And our sole purpose is to question absolutely everything government does.
Yeah.
You know?
And really for the morals to be taught from home, from church, and for the education to teach the basics of the framework of education, reading and writing and science and math, but not to come away from it with a moral position out of it. That's really the place of the home.
That is absolutely. I mean, it's not the schools or the government's responsibility to teach morals. We're going to talk about this in a later segment. About the separation of church and state. And it goes the same way. Morals, it's the job of the family and the church.
Right.
It's not government's job, and the government is actually fine with that. They seem to be actually teaching anti-morals, is what I would call it. I saw something just the other day where they want to start teaching kindergartners sex education.
Yeah, isn't that bizarre?
I mean, that's
out of place.
It just baffles my mind that who would think that a kindergartner needs to know anything about sex education?
Right.
How many 13, 14, and 15-year-olds really should know anything about sex education?
Yeah.
I mean, it's, it happens. I mean, obviously we have, but, and teaching them wise decisions is not bad, but it's not the job of the schools.
Right. It's the duty of parents and the churches. Yep. When we take things out of their structured place and best place, and we put it somewhere else, then we are actually removing opportunity for that institution to do what we want them to do.
Exactly.
And we put an extra burden on them to do what this institution
like we were talking about, when you bring education back to the local level, what makes Washington, D.C. a bureaucrat over there think they have any concept on how to teach a child in small southern Idaho?
Right.
Most of these kids around here, they're growing up on farms. They have a great grasp of, morals, and, they have work ethic. Most kindergartners can count more cows quicker than most adults around here. Yeah. It's great, so they have no concept of the learning process.
Right. Right. So if you have a centralized federal Department of Education and you want to basically teach every child in the whole nation to be the same kind of person, you're going to eventually get what we have today.
Drones.
And that is a bunch of people who are just following whatever they're told to do. And you also get a segment of the population that don't know anything about growing food, taking care of cattle, mechanic work. We just assume everybody's got to go get the university degree, and so then you just layer on top of layer of the indoctrination from education, and you standardize it all the way through the university. And by the time they come out of the university, they don't know anything about God, because they're teaching them the opposite of that. You're not teaching them anything about family, because they're teaching the opposite of that. And at the end, you have a bankrupt society, and all of that in the name of education.
Bankrupt society, which is really
exactly
the moral bankruptcy leads to the economic bankruptcy. So
right, and so we want to talk about the economy of education a little bit, because if you have a federal mandated, which is what we have right now, Board of Education, that they tell local school districts what you will do, and we'll give you money if you'll do it the way we tell you to do it, and so thus local school districts become slaves, if you will, to the federal Department of Education, because they want the money.
Well, they need the money, because they've made it so. It's funding of schools is like one of the most important things, in my opinion. I mean, we need, a Republican society. It actually says this in Article 9, Section 1 of the Idaho Constitution. That the stability of a Republican form of government depends mainly upon an intelligent and educated people.
Right.
So And you were saying, everyone right now is brought up, you go to high school, then you go to college, and then you get these, 6-figure jobs. Well, I've got friends that are doctors and lawyers that have made far less than me over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, I came out of school and I went right into the trades. I had no desire to be in an office. I'm an outdoorsy guy. I grew up on a small hay farm, and, I work. So the trades worked well for me. I got my education when I went to work for a fab shop over out of Portland, and they were looking in the early 90s of actually upgrading to computer-aided engineering and drafting and stuff, and the owner of the company came and said, "Do you want to go to school?" And I said, "Not really," but I went to school. I got a degree in the computer and automated drafting, and after I left that company, I've never used my degree.
Yeah.
I went right back into the trades. I went in as physical labor, and I've made pretty decent money my whole life. A vast majority of my whole life I was a contractor, and I made a comfortable living. I never cared about getting rich. It's
right.
And that pursuit of the almighty dollar, and I believe a little bit of that has to do with the fact that government's income comes from every dollar we make.
Yeah.
They want those people making those 6, 7, and 8-digit numbers because,
right. Yeah, and they certainly don't mind them being indebted.
No,
to get their degrees either.
So,
so we do. We obviously know that there has to be a funding mechanism to fund the public education. It's to the benefit, it's the welfare of the whole of the state, that they're well educated, that they have a working education whenever they're finished with this. It's to the benefit. So how then, maybe where I'm asking the wrong question, but how do we get to a point where we're not dependent upon the federal Department of Education and get to a point where we fund our own education as a state or in local school districts?
Well, that's really a tough question. We had that discussion about how do you just end a government agency,
right?
Or
because we're used to living off of the federal income,
and it's just so entangled. It's so much a part of everything. I believe the state, most of its budget. I'm sitting here looking at this nice little book I got from someone early this spring, or maybe it was last fall. I don't remember when I got it. That has tons of data on education and budget and learning and curves. I mean, I couldn't believe all the. It's actually information I'd looked for and had a hard time finding off the Board of Education's website. I believe most of this money that you're seeing is actually coming from the feds, and if they cut these programs, we wouldn't need them.
Right.
I mean, if you look, the top 13 paid administrators. These are not your university presidents and your football coaches and stuff. These are public school educators. They're administrators. Make more than our governor do. 13 of them.
Yeah.
Where does the fat really need to be trimmed?
Right.
We don't need to be cutting the education programs. We need to be cutting.
Yeah.
I saw in 2018 that nationwide there are 13 or 14 supervisors for every teacher. I mean,
right. So we look at the kind of funds that are going into the education system, and we see that you can understand that there's going to be levels where you're going to make more, or more money is going to need to go to someone who is supervising or administrating the whole. But when you start looking at it in comparison to what is spent at the administrative level compared to what's spent in the classroom level,
absolutely,
there's where the inequity really exists.
Well, and there's a huge level difference there. That's
right.
The difference between my income in 2020 or 2002 and Donald Trump's income.
Yeah, right.
It's unreal. It's scary what we're paying some of these administrators, and what are they really doing?
Right.
Why does a school need? When I was going to school, the office support staff were the typing classes.
Yes.
So we had a secretary that answered the phone. The vice principal had a secretary, and the principal actually had a secretary. So there were 3. Everything else was done by the high school students. We did all the typing, all the But, now it's like, well, they can't do that. Why? Well, it's confidential information. Well, that stuff was never done by the students back then anyway.
Right.
That was all handled by the few secretaries we had. Let's see. When I graduated, I believe Hillsboro had the actual high school. So there were two high schools. There was one out on the west end of town that covered some of the rural area out over there and a small part of Hillsboro. And then there was actually Hillsboro High School. I believe there were no more than 6, maybe 7 administrators in those two schools.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had a principal, a vice principal, and like I said, their immediate staff.
Right.
The school district had its board. Some of them, I'm sure, were paid, but it's not. It's just so different now. The bureaucracy is just mind-baffling.
It is, and which is we can see when we start wanting to see how can we liberate the education system to where it's dependent upon local money, local districts. Then we have to get to a spot where we think about education differently than we currently are. One of the things that I'm excited about running for office is that we need some new thinking, not innovative.
No, just
not hey, we've never done it like this before, but conservative, fiscal, responsible, the kind of thinking that benefits, not the kind of thinking that adds more money or more need. If we get to the spot where we think we need to keep inventing new things, then we've got to keep inventing new ways to get more money to do the new things.
Every job has a set of tools it needs to complete it.
Right.
With education, you've got teachers.
Right.
There's curriculum. There's little cost there. But anything more than those basic needs, it's surplus in my opinion. It's over the top. I'm a firm believer in law enforcement's important. You fund it.
Right.
The sheriff's office, it's constitutionally mandated. They should have absolutely everything they need to do their job without question ever.
Right.
But anything more than that, no.
Yeah.
So it works the same way. If government, you can't really say government should operate like a business because it's just not practical.
Yeah.
But if it ever had to operate on an actual budget like a business, it'd be in so much trouble.
Yeah. Which we're going to have to talk about that sometime because we know in Idaho, this is off topic, that we have a mandated balanced budget.
Yep.
Which I think is a misnomer to many people is that they get to thinking, well, we live within our means. But that's a total misnomer. We spend a lot of money, and so in order to keep spending that money, we have to keep raising taxes in other places. So there's really not a fiscal conservative position.
So, and like with education, everyone's really annoyed right now because it seems like every time there's an election, a special election, any time for an election, there's a school levy on it.
Right.
They're like, we pay all this tax for education. Why are they needing more? Yeah. Well, they're needing more because that top level overhead, the waste, the having a balanced budget mandated is kind of like the military having the use it or lose it. If it's in your budget, you don't, we have what is it? I haven't looked recently, but it was $480 million rainy day fund that's sitting in a bank over somewhere drawing minimal interest.
Right.
Why isn't it being put to work for Idaho?
Right. And why isn't
which is another topic?
Which is another great topic. Why isn't it even invested in
Idaho banks? Yeah,
exactly.
We have banks that are So yes, there's so many things, but if you can actually find this book online. It's from a group that's actually I think funded or involved with Alberts in some way, who is really supports the end of the federal Department of Education.
Yeah.
I think they go a little more extreme on the state level than I believe in. They believe in all charter schools, and to me, there's just no oversight in that. Mm-hmm. So that's a little carried away. But the information in here, I was really glad to get it because I'd been looking for some of these numbers and couldn't find it. And a lot of people said, well, they're agenda-driven and those numbers are biased. But all the numbers they have in here match the numbers of the state.
They're matching what's reported.
I mean, they rounded, so they're not exact numbers, but they're... So it's it's pretty accurate, and it's called Ed Trends, and you can go to I believe it's Idaho Ed News or something like that, idednews.org, and you can actually look at it online. There's a lot of great information in it.
Yeah, it really is a helpful resource, and we'll be sure to add a link to it in the post that comes with this podcast. So how can people get a hold of you, Tony? If they got a question they want to ask, hey, what's going on in the education here in District 23? How do they get a hold of you?
Well, I've got an email address. Soon I'll be having a website. We're still working on building that. So my email address is Ulrich for Idaho. That's ULLRICHFOR Idaho @gmail.com. That's usually the easiest way to get a hold of me. I don't always hear my phone ring. And
Great, yeah. So if you can't get a hold of Tony through an email,
there's
or
Facebook, yeah.
and or perhaps you're just driving down the country road and you see a farmer underneath a tractor.
It could be me.
Pulling a wrench. It could be Tony.
Yeah, out here in Elmore County, that could be me.
If you hear a loud scream.
Oh, you can find me on Twitter and what's that new one that's out? Prager, something like that.
I don't know.
I signed up for it the other day too. So
okay,
I'm pretty easy to find if you search me out.
Okay, we'll make sure to put some links there to the podcast. You can get a hold of me, Paul Thompson. You can get a hold of go to my website, votepaulthompson.com, and as well on several different formats of social media, the Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Those various places. But listen, contact us, ask us some questions, and get more information. Learn why are we running for state office. Make sure to listen to our introductory podcast, and you'll find out a little bit more about why we're even here. And
we're eager to answer questions. That's the hardest thing I've had in this district is getting people engaged. I want people and I don't want them asking the easy questions. You know, the easy question, what's your stand on the Second Amendment?
Right.
We all get that.
Well, let me check and see.
No, it's not on my hip. It must be under my seat. Right. So, we get that all the time. That seems to be the important question. We'll do a little thing on that. But it's
and it is important.
It is. But it's overworked in politics.
It's
overworked in politics, in my opinion.
So a couple of ways that people can perhaps bump across us here in the next couple of weeks. Of course, if you're listening to this sometime in 2050, these dates won't mean anything to you.
Or even after these dates.
But hopefully you're listening to these in timely manner here. But July the 13th through the 18th, Elmore County Fair.
Here in Glens Ferry. Yep, I'm actually going to go download the application right now, and we'll get that going.
Gotcha. Great. And then August 1st in Twin Falls, out at the soccer complex on the west end of town, we have a big event. Both of us will be speaking at Freedom is the Cure.
Yeah, I think you're at like 12:45. I'm at like 2:45.
I'm just after lunch, which is where everyone's ready to take a nap, and you're later in the afternoon when
everyone's wanting to head to the beer garden.
It's blistering hot, but hey, come and listen to us.
We'll have a table set up too with some information.
We
look forward to talking to everyone. So.
So find ways to get up and meet us. We'll also be at the Twin Falls County Fair September the 2nd through the 7th. So
that'll be a hot one.
Come find us. It will be. We'll look for us with.
We should see if we can get an indoor.
Oh yes, great idea. Next to a big giant fan.
Don't they have a big swamp cooler there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good, Tony. I'm going to be working on that this week. Great call. Hey, thanks for listening to a couple of Idaho Common-Taters. Yeah, here we are. So, hey, look for the next podcast and share this, share this with your friends.
Whatever you do with podcasts.
Yeah, whatever you do with podcasts.
I'll probably, once we get them linked up and published, I'll share them on my Facebook page and Twitter accounts.
Yeah. Be sure to share it with your friends, young and old alike. Hey, thanks. We'll talk to you next time.